last chapter, we talked about how the Nazis came into power and Hitler started grabbing up pieces of land. Remember, he organized the unification with Austria. He put the military into the Rhineland. He grabbed the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia, and he promised that he would not make any more territorial claims or demands. And Great Britain and France had engaged in a policy of appeasement. And so Eastern and Central Europe are kind of like, ugh. Hitler also organized the Non-Aggression Pact with the Soviet Union and agreed that they would not fight, and at the same time they would split Poland when Hitler invaded. And Hitler had no mistake about it. He planned on invading Poland. September 1st, 1939. This is the specific date that historians ascribe to the beginning of World War II. September 1st, 1939, German soldiers move across the border into Poland, and they are going to launch their invasion. Their invasion into Poland will go remarkably well. The Poles are going to fight the best they can, but they don't have the equipment that the Germans have. They haven't been able to develop their military. And the Germans are going to use a new effective type of tactic as well. And because of that, it's going to go badly for the Poles. You see here the Germans marching into Poland after their victory. Noticed by the straight-legged march that nobody does anymore because typically it's associated with the Nazis. But the invasion is based upon this tactic called blitzkrieg or lightning war. That's what the term means. And blitzkrieg was a different type of warfare than what people were used to. It combined the use of infantry, tanks, and airplanes, a tactic all at once. In World War I, for instance, or in other wars previous, you'd use your artillery, your cannons, to open up fire on an enemy position and try to soften them up, and then you send in the infantry. Well, the Nazis thought, you know what? What if we try to create as much panic and confusion as possible in the enemy and coordinate our attacks with tanks and infantry and planes all at once? That would create a lot of havoc. Also, the Nazis, even though they had armed themselves, they realized that they didn't need to hit everywhere on an enemy line. If you were to hit at one point hard enough with a big portion of your armed forces, you could create a hole or punch a hole in a line and create panic in the enemies and get them to turn around and run. So this blitzkrieg is something that people are not prepared for. It's a new tactic that had not been utilized at such point. And because of that, they overrun Poland in a couple of weeks. It's very quick that they're able to successfully invade Poland and get Poland to surrender, which surprises everybody. They weren't surprised that the Germans won. They were just surprised with the speed at which they did so. Now, it's at this point that Germany has a bit of a problem. Take a look at this particular map where you see the Jewish population pre-World War II. And you see inside of Germany, there's about 210,000 Jews living in that area. So to chase out those Jews or to try to make them unpopular, they didn't have that big of a problem. A lot of them fled. A lot of them tried to flee. But when they successfully invade Poland, there are 3.3 million Jews that they don't know what to do with. So they keep having these conversations about what is the quote-unquote solution to the Jewish problem or the Jewish question. And eventually they come up with what they refer to as the final solution. The final solution being extermination of the Jews. Now, they have to figure out what do we do to get rid of these Jews. And initially, what they started doing was they were trying to kill as many as possible. They would line them up and shoot them and execute them. They would also have mobile gas vans that they would create in order to gas women and children because they thought that was more humane. But they realized very quickly that this is not the most efficient way to kill people and that it was going to take way too long to do that. And so imagine having this strange conversation that they see as a problem of how do we get rid of them more efficiently. And so here's what they do. While they're creating their quote-unquote final solution, they take the Jews and put them in what they call ghettos. Inside Poland's borders, they're going to take certain parts of cities and they're going to wall them off from the rest of the city and put the Jews in there as a temporary holding place while they prepare a large number of concentration camps for them. That's the extermination plan that they had in effect. Right? These ghettos are literally walled off, and you see right here the construction of walls separating them from the rest of the city that were just regular Polish citizens who were not Jewish. And so this is what you're living with or dealing with if you're a Jew. And they think at the moment that they're not going to necessarily be killed because they're like, well, why do they wall off a city and just pin us up in this place? You see right here, they successfully have walled off the city and they start moving the people in there. And this is just a temporary holding place until they can finish those concentration camps. Also, after the invasion of Poland, you're going to see the Soviet Union and Germany, they agree with their Polish split. Soviet Union is going to get half. And the Soviet Union also says we would like Finland, Estonia, and Latvia to be in our sphere of influence, meaning that we plan on exploiting them. And Germany says, fine, we'll take our half of Poland and Lithuania and we'll call it even. And the Nazis had no problem giving this deal to the Soviet Union because they plan on invading at some point anyway. So they're like, that's not an issue for us. So with that deal made, the Soviet Union starts invading Finland, Estonia, and Latvia, and of course their portion of Poland. Stalin sees it as an easy land grab, but it's going to be a little more difficult than what he thought. So now the war has started, and now countries are finally going to react. Great Britain and France finally declare war on Germany. Now, even though they declare war on Germany, it's going to take them a little while. For the rest of 1939 and into 1940, Great Britain and France have to mobilize their militaries. And remember, mobilization means getting your men trained, equipped, prepared to fight, and then transported to the appropriate location. And you've got to transform your factories, and you're going to need munitions, you're going to need food. There is such a large number of things that you have to do to prepare for war. Now, while Great Britain and France are preparing for war, that time period, they call it the phony war because troops don't have a lot to do. British and French troops are just kind of hanging around. They're training, they're preparing. And remember, France really wasn't interested in going on offense. They had built the Maginot Line to protect them in case the Germans ever invaded again. So there's not a whole lot going on in terms of this time period in the phony war for Great Britain and France. And you notice here too, these soldiers here, these are British soldiers just hanging out, and they have a reference there on a sign that says number 10 Downing Street. And if you know anything, that is where the British Prime Minister's residence is. So the war has started, Great Britain and France are preparing, but Germany's not waiting around for them to mobilize. Germany starts their invasion of what are called the Low Countries. Right? And the Low Countries, you see them right here, Luxembourg, Belgium, and Netherlands. They call them the Low Countries because they're low in elevation compared to Germany and France and other nations in Europe. So these Low Countries in 1939 and 1940, that's where Hitler and the Nazis turn their attention to, and they successfully launch an invasion and take those three countries. Okay? That's where we'll stop here, and we'll talk about the Battle of France next.